Welcome to the latest episode of the Auto Futurecast with me, Chris Kirby, in association with Tomorrow's Journey. Today, I'm joined by Asif Ghafoor from Be.EV. Asif, thanks very much for joining us on this sweltering hot day in London, for making it across town. We've both had to cool off for the last 10 minutes before being on camera. Thanks for joining us. Really, really interested to cover a kind of wide range of topics actually with you today and your background. But just to start off with, for those who don't know, and a lot of people will be familiar with your business here, but tell us a bit about Be.EV and that journey and kind of what it's been to get here.
So first of all, thank you for taking time to come and speak to me as well. But for us, Be.EV is a public charging network for electric vehicles. Company itself was established in 2021, and we've basically grown the business from there. So we got some investment in from Octopus Energy generation. They invested up to 110 million back in 2022. And then we've just gone, and our main role in life is going out building networks on public spaces. So whether it'll be a drive-through or in a retail park or even on the go in between two destinations as well. So we've got a whole combination. And on top of that, we also manage the network for Greater Manchester, so on behalf of TFGM. And it's been quite an exciting period. Yeah,
we were just saying kind of not really a startup anymore, but kind of always a startup at heart, I guess, as we all are in this space. But tell us a little bit about your journey into it. So we actually met before you were Be.EV, when you were in your previous role. But yeah, just interested to how that's kind of come about, moving from, I guess, a corporate into startup life. How was that journey for you?
Yeah, no, I basically spent an entire career in corporates. So I started in banking, ended up working for Amy, and was the MD of investments. And one of my roles there was to help look to see what new markets, new businesses the business should be looking at, and where's the future of infrastructure going. And from that, I got quite interested in mobility, looking at future mobility. And from there, the EV idea kind of came to life. And I set this business up actually in Amy in 2019. And I left. So I was December 2019, I signed the contract. I left in January 2020 because the business was going in a different direction, and ended up buying the company back from them in April 21 because it was my idea and baby as well. So it made sense to do that, and I had quite a lot of interest in this space as well. So
yeah, great. Yeah, and I think that's always the thing when you're starting something. It's kind of you want your root into it, but also you need to have the passion for the subject matter or the area. So I think it's when you kind of not quite fall into it, but when it kind of evolves like that, it's a very natural thing, and usually where the best successes come from, which I guess is definitely where you guys are today. I guess some of your experience before would have helped you when you were thinking about how to roll out infrastructure and all of those things. One of the areas I'm interested in is sort of understanding what are those. When you're looking to roll these things out, it's not just a case of sticking a pin in the map and digging some holes, right? It's a complicated thing. How do you guys go about that process?
Well, we're trying to build a consumer-facing network. That's the whole plan. So it's about where people want to go. People want to charge their vehicle and try and fit it in their daily life. So a lot of the site selection activity then is based around trying to make this part of people's lives rather than people having to go and find somewhere to go and charge. So if people are going to retail parks once a week, they might be charging there. Or if they're going to drive-throughs and getting a coffee, they'll be charging there. And a lot of the site selection is built around that. But there's quite a lot of science goes into it as well. So we look at where electric vehicles are currently being purchased, where they potentially will be purchased going forward, where fleets are as well. They're quite an important customer base. And then we spend a huge amount of time, we call it trying to build brilliant sites. But for us, the site needs to work for the consumer. So I spend a lot of time, as my team does, in car parks, watching people charge and what they're doing and their behavior, because we're still in early stages of learning. And some simple things like the signage all the way through to the weight of the cable. All these things matter. So we spend a huge amount of time just obsessing about this level of detail. And having come from an infrastructure background, the first thing we did for the first year wasn't to go and expand nationally. We stayed very local in Greater Manchester because I wanted to prove to myself and my team that we can actually not just get a site, but actually build a site, bring power to the site, get the planning, and get that site up and running, and do that in a very confined geography, and try and get that right, because that's where you need to get that level of perfection.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's such an interesting thing, as you say. There's the world of EVs in the macro scale. Like when we're looking back in 10 years' time, like where we are today is still quite new, although it feels like it's moving fast and it's fast paced. So I guess that bit of petrol stations have been around for 100 years probably, and probably haven't, but they've been refined over time, and we're still in that kind of first phase of development, I guess. So interesting, you're getting those learnings firsthand. Yeah,
and we see the early adopters were quite keen drivers as well, so they will typically stand in the car park and chat to you for 40 minutes about various things. We're now beginning to see that mass market adoption. Car prices are coming down for electric vehicles, and people are getting more confidence. And that group don't want to chat; they just want to charge and go. And very often, if I knock on the window to speak to them, they're like, "Who are you? And what do you want?" And you begin to see that difference as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it comes the same thing with like signage and all of those things, as you mentioned. When you're an early adopter and you're really into EVs, you'll know what the signs mean and what the terminology means, and it's easy, and it's across all of auto we see is that we get caught up in our own acronyms and all of our own stuff, and it's like, but could my mum do it? I think I spend more time talking about my mum on these podcasts than anything else, but it's that thing. It's like, my mum drives an EV, she's on her second EV, when she goes to charge, is she going to be able to understand how to operate it? And I guess that's the phase that we're in now. And
remember, we've switched to, the biggest switch for most people is talking in kilowatts. Rather than litres and gallons, and trying to then translate that back into what does it mean. We've just been going through a very big exercise internally just on pricing, talking about pricing. How do we make pricing simpler, fairer, and easier for the consumer to actually understand? Because most people still struggle with the pence per kilowatt. What does that mean? Because it isn't a standard, because your vehicle kind of determines how much charge you need to load into your car, and the stage you arrive in, and the percentage you're at. So in the old days, telling people it costs £50 to fill your car, it doesn't. There's so many other variables, which again, consumers, we need to make, not just us, but also the wider motor industry, need to make this a lot more simpler for consumers. And today you tend to find when people buy a car, they will just be handed the keys and off they go. Nobody actually sits and takes them through a 5-minute explanation around this. Like my mom, in her case, heat your battery up before you start charging. That will speed things up. But I can tell her, but that's what the dealership should really be doing at that point. Yeah,
definitely. And I do think there's some stuff that you have to kind of learn as well and experience. We've talked a lot about we do a big test drive program with Hyundai. We run all of Hyundai's test drives. It was it came off the back of them saying, we want to get customers in cars for extended test drives, longer periods. Because when I had my first EV, I'm on my third now, coming from the industry, it still took me about 2 months where I was like, I get right, so I can get the kilowatts out of my charger, and that number that's next to the car, right? That's the size of the battery, right? Those kilowatts going. I had this whole thing in my head, and then I was like, I got it. And then once I understood it, you can then start to make those choices about charging. And I think, but some people won't necessarily even go to that level of understanding, because they just want to, like you say, understand I just fill my car up and I know that I can go until the light comes on and then fill it up again. And there's definitely some learning to go through all different numbers and different terminology.
Well, we've seen people turn up and they don't remove. There's two caps to remove for the CCS charging, and people are like, I've been sold the wrong car, because the connector doesn't work when they haven't taken the second cap off. And so it's really basic stuff like that. We're still at that stage.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a big role for dealers, but I guess in the dealership world, they're also making that change and that transition, right? And they are still selling ICE cars in most places that they're doing that, and some will have really embraced it, and others will be still learning and maybe a little bit anti. I went into a dealer 6 months ago and went to look at a new car that they had that was available as a ICE and EV. The one in the showroom was an EV. I was sat in there with my wife, and the dealer came over and went, "Don't worry, we do this in petrol as well." And I was like, "I know, but I want to buy an EV." But that guy's not going to be the guy that gives you the proper handover. No. He's going to go, "Well, I know how to." He's not interested in that area. So there's all of that transition to happen as well. But I guess you guys have got your focal point of, at that charging situation, how can you make that as good as possible? And do you find that mostly people now digital savvy? There's a lot of stuff on that side, or is it now because we're getting into mass adoption? It's got to be more not to the person who's happy using an app, but
we for example on payment we try and introduce every form. So from contactless all the way through to you can do through the app. Or you can do it through roaming partners. Again, if you think about it from a consumer perspective, we're trying to make it as simple as possible for that consumer. And, having just been at our Charging Oasis for a week, which we just launched in Manchester, and being with customers there, a lot of people are just... They're used to doing one thing, and they're not used to then if something else gets introduced. And some people have been finding, some people just don't want to use the app at all. Yeah, they just want to use contactless, and we're now reintroducing chip and pin.
Right. Okay.
Because we're finding that the customers, sometimes their cards get refused.
Right, yeah. Okay.
So, which that's down to the bank, not to us. And so if we just introduce chip and pin, that'll make it easier for them as well. So it's like a backward step, in a way, to go forwards.
Yeah, but also it's something that's familiar for people as well. Because again, I think, for me I tried to buy something from very off topic. So buy something from a vending machine the other day. I was playing football and I went to buy a Lucasade. It was really hot, and it wouldn't work with Apple Pay. And the guy's like, "Oh, it only takes card." I was like, "Well, I don't know where my cards are." But there are some people that are the other way, and when they get even the tapping is still a bit stressful, and they want to put a card in something and press a PIN number. So I guess that's also just part of helping people to feel familiar.
And we're looking at things like auto charge, and so you don't have to do anything, make it very frictionless. But again, that requires working with the manufacturers quite closely to enable that technology to work.
Yeah, definitely. And also then you've got, transparency and visibility to customers, because again, that for me would be brilliant, because I'll be like, right, I can plug this in, it's going to auto charge and auto bill me, and I can see it in my Monzo account. But maybe to my mum, she's going to go, I don't know what I'm being charged. I don't know. So you've got to find out the balance again in all the different user groups, which is, I guess, a lot of the challenge. And then you guys obviously you launched your Charging Oasis. Actually, so tell us a little bit about that. I was going to ask about kind of how you've been expanding your sites, but of course that's the big launch now.
So most of the sites we have are typically retail parks, drive-throughs, or council-owned car parks where we just lease some bays. And over time, if that site's successful, add more infrastructure there, and we'll bring the power. This site in Manchester we call it the Charging Oasis, because we went out and bought the land. And put our own Nero Express on there, so people can have an amenity and coffee. And we purposefully went out and thought about it, try to think about it differently, because, as you said, petrol stations have been around over 100 years, and everything doesn't need to be in that same design format, and the experience of charging your vehicles longer as well. So actually we end up step one, buy land. Step two, we brought in an architect. It's a guy called Ed Lipton from Architect That, and his job was to design and think about the design and think about the turning of the vehicles. So it's a circular design. And you get more vehicles in that way as well. And for the customer experience, they've got more space around them. So they're able to, as you will do, especially with families, you're getting in and out while you're charging. But it's a safe space because you haven't got any vehicle movements going on near you as well. So it's the first Charging Oasis, and the whole idea was also think about planting, think about regeneration, think about design and aesthetics, and it isn't just a petrol station.
Definitely. I think is a completely, whilst it's fulfilling somewhat the same task as a petrol station, other than that, everything is totally different. Like you say, dwell time, experience, sort of the things that you do. I think people are going to get used to that. Okay, well, I'm going to charge and I've got 20 minutes. And they'll have a routine of things they do, either with their kids or walk their dog or those things. It's a different scenario. Whereas petrol station, you're in and out as quickly as possible. So, yeah, that's really interesting. And then your rollout of your site. So I know you were saying that, to start off with, it was Greater Manchester, but you're expanding your footprint. What are your kind of future plans? What kind of things are you looking at?
So again, we rolled out Northwest first, then went to Northeast and Yorkshire. The next wave now is Midlands and the South.
Okay.
And so quite a lot of infrastructure. It takes up to 2 years to build a site. So land which we've got arranged deals on, it'll take a period for those then to go live. Yeah. And but actually, that's the push. Is really we're a UK based business. By UK, I actually mean Great Britain. We're not doing Northern Ireland. Yeah. Because it's basically trying to replicate the same systems and processes we've set up to be able to then do that a lot more efficiently and a lot more simpler as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess that must be. It's one of those types of products that would be very country specific. So in terms of the grid connection, but also I'm guessing like planning, regulations, who you deal with, all those things. If you just went, oh yeah, we've got this great business model, we're just going to put it in Spain, I suspect it's like everything's almost brand new, apart from maybe the design of the layout, so.
And the grid connection and the way the grid works and so on. Actually, the UK government's been making it simpler, so we don't need planning anymore. They've just removed that. Right, great. Which is good news, because that's taken 6 months out of the process. Yeah. We never struggled with planning, it just took time and it cost money to go through. But because you can imagine a lot of local authorities welcome this infrastructure going in.
Yeah, and do you see much of a market for using sites that already exist? And I know you said about kind of retail spaces and things, but there's also a lot of car parks, spaces in dealerships, all of those kind of things. Is that an area that's kind of interesting to you guys? Unutilized car space, or is it really just you're thinking more about the specific locations as you scale?
Yeah, we will try and go where we think consumers are going to go.
Yeah, okay.
So, like a car dealership, you'll tend not to be there a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So, whereas you will be at your Sainsbury's, for example.
So where it's like a regular visiting point or something that's nearby. Yeah, makes sense. And I guess there are use cases for those types of things that might be there, but that's can be fulfilled in different ways, I guess. Yeah, lots of people are coming from the fleet sector that go, oh, I've got this fleet area and I could put chargers in here and then just start using it. But I think from a retail customer, no one's going to want to go to the yard of the local dealer where they store all their cars to charge them outside. But a nearby fleet operator might do. So therefore, there could be a market for that. But I guess you guys are looking predominantly B2C or at least a B2B to C type scenario.
Yeah, and the fleet customer is still a customer at the end of the day. The driver will want to pick somewhere with amenities, most probably a toilet, and fit in a break around that. So it's interesting because I travel around a lot into different car parks and sites. And we went to one site where we put some chargers in. We asked the driver, why do you come here? The fleet driver. And I'll say call Dave, won't call him he or she here now, but they said, oh, this is a great location because it's hidden from the road, so I can stay here longer. Right. So they're trying to extend the shift of charging. Right, okay. And I don't like that other side because it's very visible from the road. I was like, whereas our whole view is that you want to be visible from the road from a safety perspective.
Yes,
And especially as in the winter. But you can try and do the right thing and you find someone comes along and says something like that. Yeah, and everyone's got their own angles or own approach on it. And I think that's also it. And I'll come back to this later on, but it's an interesting one also about the business model. Because I guess for you guys, you're selling kilowatt hours, I guess, so you're wanting people to take that as long as possible. So if you can make it a situation where they feel comfortable being for as long as possible, and that definitely helps that model. Yes. I was just going to go back a little bit actually to the kind of public expectation side of things. There's an interesting thing that I've discussed a couple of times on the podcast recently about
Some of the terminology, early terminology, some of it that's been put in place to try and make it easier for consumers, but where I feel like as we're getting into the mass adoption stage, may be confusing. Talked a lot in a previous episode about the WLTP range numbers, and if you're into it and you can go, right, well, I can compare the WLTP numbers between two cars, and I understand that means that the one with the higher number will get me more range, but I know I'm never going to get these numbers. I know what they equate to in real world miles, but that then opens up to criticism for people going, well, these numbers are saying it does 350 mile range and it only does 250. But obviously it was put in there to make a standard that people can compare to, and maybe the same thing applies in the charging world about the 50, 150, 350s, that I know that if I go to a 350 charger I'm going to get 150 and that's perfectly fine for me. But actually the customer's expectation is, well, why is this not exactly at 350 for the whole time? Because they don't have that knowledge. So do you think there's some work to do? I mean, particularly in the charging space, but actually more generally in EVs, about whether we need to sort of maybe rethink some of the labels that we're putting on things for this mass market?
Well, the Charge UK, which is the charging industry body, ran an exercise on trying to relabel the speeds.
Right.
I think they had about 6 sessions, 20 different operators involved, and the end result, they couldn't agree. Because today, we call it ultra rapid, rapid, fast, and some people call it, in Europe, they call it fast is a rapid.
Right, okay.
And so on. And a fast isn't fast.
Fast
is like an all-day dwell. And also, so we've got that problem going on, which hasn't been solved. And the second problem we've got going on is the point you highlight. So, and we don't, but a number of operators will just label things incorrectly. So they'll say, that's a 150 kilowatt charger, and you turn up and you can't get more than 40 on a split because you're on a split, and that might have been detuned to 110 or something, because that's what the LV connection allowed, and so on. So the low voltage connection they've tied themselves into, and I think that just creates more problem. You already got people confused. Why am I not getting 350 when your car can't take 350? And even if it could only be there for about 10% of the charge, and so on. And then you've got people mislabeling. And so you end up with a slower speed as well. So that will self-sort it, I think, over time. There's been a bit of government intervention as well around what consumers should be expecting on standards and so on, which has just come into force this year, and everyone's going to be reporting in January next year on that. That's going to throw up a whole lot of noise as well, because I think we're hearing that standard basically says that every charger should be available 99% of its time. And we're hitting 99%. A lot of work gone in to get to that level. But we know that some of the councils are hitting 25%. So it's a bit of a so what moment. What's going to happen at the end of that? No one knows. The government then fine councils. It's going to be a bit odd.
That doesn't really make sense.
No.
And if that takes money out of the council's pocket where they would have put new chargers in or upgraded their chargers, it kind of becomes counterintuitive. Do you think there'll be an element of sort of some kind of standard, a little bit, I guess, like the WLTP, where there's that's a standard test that determines a range number? Do you see a time where there's something similar for chargers where they get tested, as they say, there's mislabeling this, like, oh well, this charging box is capable of 150, but at this site with a split and the connection is only capable of 40, is someone going to come and test that and go, well, you need to be able to X% of the time deliver? Like, I'm thinking of like broadband speeds, because there was a whole thing for that for ages of it's like really fast, and you get given a slow connection all the time.
But I think consumers will sort this out themselves, because as consumers understand it more, they'll realise that particular company's chargers are always not at the right speed, and they'll go elsewhere. And so people will self-sort themselves in that. That's
interesting, because then that's where the brand name then becomes important, because you become an element of of reliability. I mean, I think for me, and I charge a lot in the south, so I've not used one of your chargers before, but I would always go to a grid serve charger, for example, because I kind of know what I'm getting with them. And there's a couple that I know that I trust, and some that I don't know who I'd be more wary about using. Either ones that I've had a bad experience with, or where I don't know them. And if you don't know them, maybe you go, well, I'll try them and see if it's any good. And there's some that I've used recently where I'm like, oh, these are all right, so I would use these again. So I guess there is an element where there's a level of consumer confidence within that. But that takes a little bit of learning for each person to go through, really, to get that
and
knowledge.
that's why we obsess about just getting the brilliant sites, the brilliant basics right with the consumers, and making sure that if you can't get them to charge first time properly, to get the connection sorted, the payment, all of those small items which interrupt that consumer journey is what we spend a huge amount of time just obsessing and rechecking, because you can never solve that, because you'll find another issue along the line. Recently we had an issue where one of the manufacturers did a firmware update, which has been knocking the chargers out. Okay. And so we're like, you think you've got a steady network, and then suddenly in mid charge it just stops charging. Right, okay. And then you had to reboot the whole system to actually get the connector out, and so on. So you're forever on this journey, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess those are the things that you identify as an operator, the things that are important for the customer, I guess, at the sort of base level. I want to know that when I get there's one available. I want to know that I can charge first time. I want to know that the speed is reliable for what I expect. And I want to know that I'm being charged fairly, the right price for it. And I guess if you kind of got those things, there's a lot of work, as you say, that goes around getting each one of those to work and to be right. But I guess those are the things that customers want at the end of the day. I just wanted to move on a little bit to thinking about the business model side of things. So one of the things that I'm really interested in, and I think our listeners would be about kind of how do these things operate and make money, because they are very much like an infrastructure play, like you've said, and they're long games. But kind of how does that roughly work in layman's terms? How do you find the site and do all of that business modeling?
Well, making money would be nice. A starting point on that. So basically, our model is it's a long-term play. So when we've gone out and looked for funding, we're talking to people who understand that there need to be patient capital around this. So we will typically go out, acquire a site. We'll take a lease for 20 years, 25 years on that site. And then we will take us about 2 years to get the kit in and bring the power and get everything set up, typically building a substation on the site as well. We'll try to have minimum 6 to 8 bays as well, because again, from a user experience, when you turn up, you don't want to find there's no capacity. But you also don't want to overbuild, because that means your capital's just tied up. On average, it'll take us about 7 years to break even on a site, to get to break even on a site. So we're expecting a majority of people to charge at home. That's built into our model. And then those who are publicly charging, there's a mix group there, because some people will never have anywhere to charge at home. And some fleets, of course, will be charging when they're out and about as well, and other journey times for drivers and stuff. But we're effectively making money by selling power.
Yes,
that's our base model. We build the infrastructure. We have to patiently wait for utilization and people to come and use those sites. In the meantime, keep your overheads and your costs low from a business perspective. And so we have a very outsourced model. So my core team is 30, 40 people. And we work a lot with long-term partners on long-term relationships, and use them to do the build, to manage the estate, the back office, the app, and so on. And it's a way to manage the cost base as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So, very much that utilization game. Like everything in the automotive world is somewhat utilization based. If you're running a rental fleet or test driving cars in a dealership all the way through to to running effectively an energy provision business. So yeah, I guess that's the thing that you're constantly balancing. Then that bit, you want high levels of utilization, but you don't want to be losing customers where they can't get access to the service. How do you guys go about modelling that? I mean, I can't even get my head around where you'd even start to try and figure that out.
Well, we look at, I think it's not much similar from where the car industry is. We look at trends on vehicle uptake, and we do a lot of projections forward of where we think that uptake will be, and then from that create subgroups of who's going to be charging where, and they then become part of that forward modelling when we do that. And that's effectively the process you take your investors through. So the investors also want to know, what is the base model? When we've gone out and we raised bank finance last year with NatWest and KFW, they go through the same process of looking at that forward projection of EV uptake. And that's why sometimes when government does things like fiddling around with the ZEV mandate or the end dates, it causes a massive ruction for all of the charge point operators. So you've got a market today with circa £6 billion raised to invest in the UK infrastructure. But the best way to stop that investment is to stop fiddling with some of the outcomes, because we've built a business case on the back of what we thought was certain, and then if that certainty keeps on moving, it's not that certain, and that creates problems. So one thing we always plea is government just sit still and stop fiddling with it. You're not actually helping at all. And at times I know they've been trying to support the car industry as they kind of go through this change, which is a big change, but the knock-on effect then is you are knocking confidence in charging infrastructure going in as well. It's
a bit managing those or trying to make as many of the unknowns knowns and trying to manage those. And I guess that because it's such a long-term play, your break-even cycle for a site is at least kind of the average 2 cars for somebody. So it's quite a long, in the automotive world, it's hard to predict if you're going, what's the residual value of this car? That's 3 years, I'm trying to predict it. And there's so many things that go into that. But you guys are basically almost like taking a residual value on 2 whole cars. So you just try and figure out what's going to happen. I guess you've got energy market and you've got EV uptake and you've got macroeconomics. So imagine that's a complicated spreadsheet.
And you look at the UK is an interesting market because I think there's circa about 150 charge point operators in the UK, and it's one of those markets where everybody's woken up and thought, oh, this is my play. So from energy providers, oil majors, through to independents like us, even car dealers have gone off and installed public networks. And what we're beginning to see, as you do in any early stage market, is a bit of a shakedown going on as some of the operators are merging, some are collapsing and some are growing. And that'll create more issues, as they always do. But you try and just ride that through as well from a business perspective. But you just want to make sure that you're backing at the starting point is smart money who understand these risks and these things are going to happen. And we're lucky with Octopus Energy Generation that's what we have got, is an investor who understands the long-term nature of this and understands the way they should be managed.
Yeah, absolutely. And the long term, the very long term is certain. The change, certainly my view, and pretty much in everyone's now, is that the long-term view of an EV transition is definitely happening. I guess the thing is the maths around the timing. The small changes that you mentioned can move a break-even point by 6 months or something. Even that kind of thing could have a big knock-on effect, I guess.
Yeah, and you've got to remember, what are we looking at today? Well, 4% of vehicles are EVs on the road. So the percentages are still very low. So I'm building this infrastructure. My site, on average, will cost me between £500,000 to £1 million of infrastructure money going in. And then it does turn into a bit of field of dreams because you're building it hoping they will come at some point. And when you've got 4%, we're still not expecting a huge amount of demand. But when it gets to 30%, we are expecting a huge amount of demand. And if that doesn't come, that'll just slow down our rollout as well. And we'll be more cautious.
And you've got a couple of different variables in that as well, because you've got the on a longer scale, what's going to be the adoption of EVs and the speed of that, which can be influenced by the government, but also by macroeconomic effects, by availability of vehicles, all of those things that we've seen challenged. But then I guess also in your modelling in the very micro, you're thinking about times of day, times of year, all of those things as well. It's, everyone talks about charging in school holidays coming up. That first week of school holidays, all the sites are going to be super busy. So again, I don't know how you also go about modelling some of that. You go, well, I'm definitely going to need. There's some days a year where I'll need 10 bays, but the average is only going to be 5, and some of the time is only. I guess you've got some of that, and then you've got to say, and what's the projection that's today, and then what's the projection in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
So,
and we had it was interesting. First quarter this year. So last year we beat our expectation of what we thought we were going to hit by about 20%, 30%. Yeah. This year it started off and we were basically not growing but not shrinking. Mm-hmm. And so we spoke to a few people in the market and they're like, the market's down 10 to 20%, but on quarter. Yeah. And we're like, well, why is that? Because it's winter. You think it'd be more consumption because of the colder batteries and so on. And no one really had we had loads of people say, oh, well, the final quarter, of course, you've got deliveries happening and so on. And we were like, it doesn't make any sense. And that's still where the stage we're at. You got variables outside of our control, which kind of slow down consumption, which makes no sense whatsoever. And we'll see that at a site level as well, where we'll see some sites perform really well and then they'll slow down on growth and then they'll pick up again. And there's no logic to what's going on. And that's what irritates me actually at times, because I feel like I'm not in control of what we're doing because these type of things are happening and we don't understand why. So we're currently putting in quite a lot of investment into data analytics and insight and understand better try and understand better and test different variables to see whether that impacts demand as well. Yeah,
because I guess it's also one of those things that whilst you haven't got full control over that demand, because yes, you can tell people about the sites and things, but if people aren't charging in that area for whatever reason, that's going to have an impact. But I guess also it's not an easy thing to go, oh well, we put 10 charges in there, but probably won't need 8, so we'll just take 2 out. Like those or we need 2 more. Yeah. That's a hard thing to do as well. So you've almost got the thing of you make your educated bet and you do the thing, and then you've got to hope that you're within those variables, which is where I guess your scale and experience and everything makes it, gives you a lot more strength than, like you say, these operators who are going, oh, well, I'm a dealership and I'm going to set up 5 charge point locations and without any of that knowledge.
I find it. I've seen in some of the sectors, whether it's supermarkets or it's large retailers or car dealers, who've gone off and said, oh, I'm going to build a network. I'm just like, I don't understand that, because coming from an infrastructure background, I know the long-term nature of this. They're going to be putting out this massive capital outlay, and it just doesn't match the way their funds are raised.
Not a return cycle that they'd be used to. I mean, certainly for car dealers, and that's I make an investment now in my numbers for this year, and I'm delivering these numbers. And if you're
20 years, maybe it's a bit longer.
exactly. Yeah, so it's definitely interesting. I mean, we're seeing that for sure in other markets as well, because we operate internationally, and obviously different countries that we operate in have different levels of EV adoption. We do a lot of work in the Middle East. That's a really interesting one for EVs. The infrastructure is really early there, but loads and loads of like noise and excitement. But it's also the same thing, is that a lot of the big I'm going to say infrastructure, but I mean infrastructure as in the people that own the buildings or the car dealerships. They're all the ones that are going, we want the network. Yeah. And the government are sitting there going, well, everyone wants to put the chargers in, but where do we put them and who's going to do it and all those things? But no one seems willing to collaborate. Yeah. And that seems an early stage version of kind of where we've got to here. That will end up with 30 different operators, and then they'll end up consolidating. And is that a thing that you see sort of happening in the shorter term? And we briefly touched on it, but you see that some of the smaller players will end up getting sort of folded into some of the bigger ones, and we might end up a little bit, keep going back to petrol stations today, but in a world where there's 5 or 6 sort of major operators. Well,
and actually it's interesting, in this space there isn't a big player yet in the UK. So you've got people who've got more sites than others, but actually to have real leadership from their perspective, you'd need to be a very national footprint. And so the undertaking both from a time and money perspective, is still very large
Yeah.
to have that national. But we will see this market. We know a number of operators are up for sale already.
Yeah.
We're beginning to see that. So they will have 1,000 units in the ground typically, 1,000 to 2,000. And that might be a quicker way of actually building scale for those who are left. But to get from 150 to 5, I think, are still struggling on the maths.
Yes, because all of the integration, we've done some work with one of our customers was a charge point operator, and just spending some time understanding the models with them. And I know that the interoperability between the different networks isn't really there. So if you guys went out and went, we'll go and buy 3 providers, but that doesn't mean that it works with your app and with and the charge points will be different and they won't plug into your system. So it's not an easy thing just to go and buy up the locations. In effect, you've either got to commit to changing all of the hardware and software, or find a way of plugging it all in. So that 150 into 5 just sounds super confusing.
It's quite, and a few people who have gone out and bought at the wrong price as well. So that also puts people off then doing something because it's hard to price the networks. Because again, you're forward projecting what the income is going to be. But the market will consolidate. You'll see a shrinking to maybe 30, 40 from 150 at least over time. And we're beginning to see a few operators who have won tenders but actually don't have the capital.
Right, okay.
Or have taken on sites with retail parks and don't have the money to actually build them.
Right, okay.
And they were hoping to use those sites to raise the money. We've done either the way around. We've actually raised the money and then gone look for sites because it's too stressful.
Yes,
trying to balance it the other way. Well, too stressful for me anyway. I didn't like that option.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's going to be definitely an interesting space, and it makes sense. I think and again, I know I mentioned GridServe earlier. I know when they bought the charging highway originally, that were kind of buying a footprint, but they were always going to. It was old technology, so they knew they were going to replace it. But I guess where everybody's on the sort of same stack, but like on the same level of technology, with chargers have kind of reached a point now. It doesn't really make it much economic sense to buy an operator and then go and change all of their stuff.
No, and most of the tech now talks to each other. So as part of the government requirements to bring some standardization, and loading onto your back office is just a bulk load really to a large extent. So so we see that, and I think it'll be an interesting space to watch what actually happens in the next 2 years. Yeah,
and different types of product as well. I guess there's some of the sort of the on street versus location versus sort of specialist location stuff. So there'll still be a place, I guess, for different people with a different offering as well. People that operate in different areas.
And we did on street. We do on street in Manchester, for example. And but actually, we found that the user experience is better through the retail park type dwell type location than because the speeds are slower. Some of the ones we got in Manchester just do 3 kilowatts. That's very slow.
And because there is the whole challenge, and without wanting to open a whole nother can of worms about what happens if you haven't got a driveway and you want to charge at home. But a lot of the problem, I guess, with the on street stuff is that you can, in most cases, get the equivalent of a home charger by parking on street. But if it costs you 3 times as much as at home, you may as well pay a little bit more and just get it done in half an hour when you get your Sainsbury's shop, I suppose. And I guess that's where maybe it's washing out in some scenarios.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. And then I guess just kind of wrapping things up a little bit in terms of what you sort of see as being the next iteration over the next couple of years. We talked about consolidation. What else do you see sort of happening in this sort of charging space? More of the Oasis type projects, more of the specific charging locations, or a bit of a mixture?
I think it's going to be more of the same to a large extent in terms of dwell locations where people go and do something, and on the go, en route locations are the real solution here. I kind of see that if you look at along all the major national networks we have in the UK, road networks, then every junction will have some form of amenity and charging. So in 10 years' time, people will read in books that they used to go to motorway service stations to stop. They're just never going to have enough capacity of power and land to be able to do that. There'll still be a place for them. I'm not saying there isn't,
of course,
but actually you're also getting a lot of amenities added along junctions, along the motorway, and I think the push is still to create more frictionless charging. For some form of automatic charging and not having to connect and set up an account and all this kind of stuff will still be part of that mix as well. And as you look at the cars, the more interesting new cars are all electric.
Yes, absolutely.
And so your choice will be growing, and which actually means people like cars, so they'll want to be buying newer versions, and hopefully that increases the percentage on the road. But and you also got to remember, we started on this journey to really try and clean the air we breathe. This is the road traffic is the main contributor and a way to actually be able to remove a lot of harmful emissions. And we often forget, we talk about charging and so on, but actually there was a greater purpose to why we set this up. And if we can build more Oasis and think differently about it, we will do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's really interesting. Yeah, the couple of things there that I think as an EV driver resonate. I mean, definitely the bit about having more regular locations off the highways. It's very easy to do long distances in EVs. I'm always preaching to people who don't, I can't do my long drives. So the infrastructure here is generally really good, but you do get those situations in a service station. I went to one that had 16 on a bank holiday weekend and couldn't get on, and luckily I knew that there was one of their old chargers around the corner and managed to sneak on. But the idea of having you couldn't, where they had whatever it was 16 or 18, you couldn't put any more there. They would have to go somewhere else. So, having a smaller thing at the next junction, etc., which I hadn't really. I've seen them pop up, but I hadn't really thought of it like that before. I think the same thing about cars. I often see people on LinkedIn talking about EVs, but there's still people. I read yesterday of someone going, but it's just the politicians of trying to get us to move to EVs, and I think that. But almost we've forgotten about the fact that it's about clean air. We've just gone, well, it's just better and cheaper and easier, and then people go, well, sometimes it isn't, and you go, but don't forget about the fact that. These are purpose behind it. Yes. There was actually a purpose behind it in the first place. It's just turned out that these vehicles now actually are better, easier, and cheaper to operate. So there's no. It stacks up on a non-environmental, and then you have the environmental bit on top, which I think is great. Asif, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. We could definitely talk about it. I say this at the end of every episode. I genuinely do this for my own interest more than anything else. I'm glad that people enjoy listening to it as well. Thanks everybody for listening and watching. If you want to catch any of the other episodes, they're across all of the Auto Futurecast channels: YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, and Apple. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.